Then Plymouth Gin would pluck me out of that bar and send me around the world, which was amazing. And that's what got me to Australia, the USA, Spain, and I started seeing what international marketing was looking like as well through the eyes of launching or relaunching, should I say, an old gin brand. But in that moment, I'm learning from Charles Rolls, who would go on to found Fever Tree, so an amazing entrepreneur at that. I would go on to John Murphy was also a partner there. He was the founder of Interbrand, which kind of famously in the 80s rebranded all of the big names, and it's sort of where brand equity models were born out of. So I was learning, I didn't know I was learning, but I was learning from some of the best and the greatest at the time. I was just enjoying myself, if I'm being totally honest. I didn't realize that all of it was going in and staying inside this head.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one thing to kind of be like, okay, you're doing a job, you're selling the brand, you're growing the presence of the brand, and a whole other thing entirely to be like, oh wow, I'm contributing to scenes right now. I'm kind of a part of this like greater cultural shift that's happening in the drinks industry, and no wonder you got hooked. In 2007, you were named the best brand ambassador at Tales of the Cocktail. So I think no one better to ask, Simon, what makes a good brand ambassador?
So I think about all of those things we just talked about, the sort of the journey of my career. Getting in the wine shop, I learned as much as I could about product knowledge, not just my own, right? I knew about all the other gins, of course, when I was the ambassador of Plymouth Gin, but I knew about cognac, I knew about tequila, I knew about wine. So I was someone that had knowledge, done my WSET. I was someone that had knowledge of product and spirits, which meant I could hold a good conversation with anybody. When I walked into their bar, I remember one particular occasion I walked in and started having this amazing conversation about tequila with the bartender, became friends over tequila, and then he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I work for gin." And he's like, "Oh, if you know this much about tequila, I think I might trust talking to you about gin." So I think product knowledge is a big one, and then being able to convey that product knowledge to others that might not know it, because we're always learning in a way that is entertaining. I think that's good. I think that having I'm going to use the word empathy, but having a degree of empathy for the people that you're working with, getting into work, doing prep, finishing at 2 in the morning, dealing with busy customers, sometimes dealing with difficult customers. Timing of when you go and talk to somebody is key. It's not about you really, it's about them. That's if you can have that attitude that you're selling something to them, and so that what can I do to help you? I have this product, could we work together? That is an amazing approach. And then I think that's the basics, and then I think that to stand out from there, you do need to show up. That's one thing. Being a face in the room and representing your brand is good. But then if you can start to get creative and come up with ideas and fun ways to transform your brand and tell the story of your brand in ways that are engaging for everybody, that's amazing. And if you have the ability on top of that to bring people together, I think that's kind of like the art of success. In 2007, I think about that year, I was sort of almost, moving forward in my career at that moment, but I was sort of still seen as this face of the brand. But in 2006, I'd thrown the first ever party that Tales of the Cocktail had ever had. They had always, it was always about education, and I went to the educations. I'm like, all right, the education is good, but then all we do is go out for dinner afterwards. Let's have a party. And of course, before we know it, I remember that party. We thought 250 people would show up, and of course it was 500. And I watched every bartender that was a friend of mine help get behind the bar, go and buy ice from the local, pharmacy, because we'd run out,
Sure.
and you just saw the camaraderie of the industry come together to make it happen, and that was what was sort of amazing about it. And so, yeah, the following year, I feel like winning brand ambassador might have been a culmination of that sort of moment and everything we sort of had done. But like the idea that we could bring so many bartenders together. If you ever see the list of guest bartenders of that first event I did. It was Peter Dorelli, it was Salvatore Calabresi, it was Dale DeGroff, it was Audrey Saunders. Audrey Saunders actually was the co-host that had come up with the idea for the party in the first place, and so we sort of did this together. It was amazing, but the list was incredible, and it was people from all over the world, and it sort of transformed Tales of the Cocktail in a way, because next year a few more brands would come and throw events. And now if you go to Tales of the Cocktail, it's arguably some of the best brand events you'll see at a trade show in the world, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the most important trade shows for definitely the on-premise and bartenders in the industry, and to be a
Yeah.
part of that history is such a special thing.